The stars dimmed one by one across the Orion sector, like candles being gently snuffed out by an invisible hand. On Earth, 12-year-old Thea Blackwood stood in the observatory of the Global Space Defense Initiative, GSDI, her dark curls illuminated by the glow of countless monitoring screens. Her father, Commander James Blackwood, hadn't meant to bring her to work that day, but the school's choir practice had been canceled, and sometimes the universe has its own plans. "Something's consuming the light," announced Dr. Rowan Nash, the GSDI's lead cinephysicist, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun as she studied the readings. "It's unlike anything we've ever encountered." The assembled scientists watched in horror as another star system went dark on their monitors. Thea, perched on a swivel chair near the back of the room, noticed something nobody else did. The pattern of the disappearing stars wasn't random. It followed a rhythm, like a song she couldn't quite hear. She began to hum softly, matching the tempo of the vanishing lights. The room fell silent as the peculiar melody filled the air. Commander Blackwood turned to his daughter, recognition dawning on his face. "That pattern. Rowan, look at this." He quickly pulled up a visualization of the stellar extinctions, overlaying them with the rhythm of Thea's humming. They'd matched perfectly. The entity responsible for the disappearing stars had been dubbed the Void Weaver by the scientific community. Initial scans revealed it to be larger than a solar system, with a structure that defied the laws of physics. But what terrified the world's leaders wasn't its size, it was its trajectory. The Void Weaver was heading straight for Earth. As emergency meetings convened across the globe, Thea spent hours in the observatory, watching the entities approach through the powerful telescopes. She noticed how the darkness it created wasn't complete destruction. The stars weren't being consumed, they were being changed. In the wake of the Void Weaver's passage, the stars would sometimes flicker back, but they sang different colors now, frequencies that human instruments struggle to detect. Dr. Nash, intrigued by Thea's unusual perception of the phenomenon, began working closely with her. Together, they discovered that the Void Weaver's movements corresponded to complex mathematical patterns similar to music theory. "It's like it's trying to compose something," Thea explained, her fingers tracing the patterns on the display screens. "But it doesn't know our instruments." The global response to the threat was predictably military in nature. Earth's combined forces prepared to launch an unprecedented arsenal of weapons, even as scientists warned that conventional weapons would likely be useless against an entity that could manipulate the fundamental forces of spacetime. Commander Blackwood found himself torn between his duty to defend Earth and his growing conviction that his daughter's insights might offer another way. The turning point came during a crucial defense meeting, when Thea interrupted the proceedings by broadcasting a musical sequence she had composed based on the Void Weaver's patterns. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The entity's approach slowed, and for the first time, it began emitting signals that their instruments could partially decode. Dr. Nash's team worked frantically to analyze the data, but it was Thea who understood first. "It's lonely," she announced with the simple clarity of a child. "It's been traveling through space for so long, changing things to try to make them familiar, but nothing ever answers back quite right." She looked at her father with determined eyes. Until now. The revelation sparked a heated debate among Earth's leaders. The idea that this cosmic entity might be attempting communication rather than invasion seemed impossible to many, but the evidence was becoming harder to ignore. As the Void Weaver drew closer, its patterns became more complex, more responsive to the signals Thea and Dr. Nash were sending. The scientific community was divided. Some saw it as humanity's first chance at meaningful contact with a truly alien intelligence. Others warned that they might be anthropomorphizing a natural phenomenon, projecting human characteristics onto something utterly beyond their comprehension. But Thea knew better. She recognized in the Void Weaver's song something she had felt herself many times, the desperate desire to be understood. As Earth's military forces stood ready and the world held its breath, She prepared to do something either incredibly brave or foolish. She was going to teach a cosmic entity how to sing. The first part of humanity's strangest first contact was about to begin, and their best hope lay in the hands of a 12-year-old girl who saw music in the stars. The GSDI's main laboratory had been transformed into what Dr. Nash jokingly called the universe's most advanced music studio. Banks of quantum computers processed the Void Weaver's signals, while synthesizers converted them into sounds humans could comprehend. In the center of it all sat Thea, surrounded by instruments both terrestrial and experimental. Dr. Nash had discovered that Thea's ability to perceive the Void Weaver's patterns went beyond simple musical intuition. Brain scans revealed that her neural patterns synchronized with the entity's emissions in ways that defied explanation. "It's like her mind is naturally tuned to its frequency," she explained to Commander Blackwood, who watched his daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. The Global Defense Council was growing impatient. Admiral Helena Rhodes, a stern woman with eyes like steel, demanded daily updates on their progress. "We're sitting here playing music while that thing gets closer to Earth," she argued during one particularly tense meeting. "We need to prepare for the possibility that this communication attempt will fail." But Thea was making breakthrough after breakthrough. She had begun to identify recurring themes in the Void Weaver's emissions, patterns that suggested emotions, concepts, and even what might be memories. "It's not just random changes," she explained to her father one evening, her hands moving excitedly as she spoke. "When it transforms a star, it's trying to recreate something it remembers, like painting with light and gravity." Dr. Nash's team made another stunning discovery. The stars that had been changed by the Void Weaver weren't damaged. They were operating on new physical principles that their instruments were only beginning to understand. "It's not destroying them," she reported. "It's teaching them to resonate at different frequencies, like retuning instruments in a cosmic orchestra." The breakthrough came during an unexpected moment. Thea had fallen asleep at her station after hours of work, and her dreams were filled with starlight and song. The monitoring equipment recorded a spike in neural activity that perfectly matched a new pattern from the Void Weaver. She woke with tears in her eyes and a revelation she could barely put into words. "It's not just lonely," she told Dr. Nash and her father. "It's lost. It comes from somewhere where all the stars sing together, but in our universe, everything's tuned wrong. It's been trying to find its way home by changing things to match what it remembers." She paused, looking at the starfield displays. "But I think maybe we can help it make something new instead." The proposal that followed was either brilliant or insane. Thea suggested that instead of trying to understand the Void Weaver's original song, they should teach it new ones. She wanted to share human music, everything from classical symphonies to children's lullabies, while learning to manipulate the quantum harmonics that the entity used to reshape space-time. Commander Blackwood was hesitant. "The risks," he began, but Dr. Nash interrupted him. "James, your daughter might be the only being in our universe who can truly communicate with this entity. We have to try." A new team was assembled. Dr. Lyra Chen, a quantum musician who had pioneered the field of computational acoustics, joined them to help translate human music into forms the Void Weaver might comprehend. Professor Marcus Webb, an expert in xenolinguistics, worked to identify patterns that might represent language rather than just music. As they worked, the Void Weaver's approach continued to slow. It began to mirror back variations of the songs they sent, creating stunning astronomical displays that had astronomers worldwide scrambling to document the phenomenon. A star would flare in rhythm with a Beethoven symphony, while another pulsed in time with a traditional African drum pattern. But not everyone was convinced. Admiral Rhodes and her supporters argued that the entity might simply be mimicking their signals to lower their defenses. Military satellites were armed and ready, despite growing protests from the scientific community. Thea felt the pressure mounting, but she also sensed something else. A growing excitement from the Void Weaver as it discovered new ways to express itself. Its transformations became more subtle, more controlled. Instead of completely changing the stars it encountered, it began creating delicate harmonies with their natural frequencies. During one late-night session, as Thea worked with Dr. Chen to compose a new piece for their unusual audience, she made a decision. If the Void Weaver was willing to learn their songs, perhaps it was time for her to learn to sing in its language. The risks were unknown. No human had ever attempted to directly interface with an entity that operated on quantum and cosmic scales. But as she watched the transformed stars pulse with otherworldly light, Thea knew that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs required a leap of faith. She began to formulate a plan, one that would either bridge the gap between two utterly alien forms of consciousness or prove Admiral Rhodes right about the futility of their musical diplomacy. The universe held its breath, waiting to see what harmony might emerge from this unprecedented duet between a human child and a cosmic entity that painted with starlight. The day Thea revealed her plan, the GSDI's briefing room erupted into chaos. She wanted to attempt direct neural synchronization with the Void Weaver, using a modified version of Dr. Chen's quantum harmonics interface. The risks were unprecedented. No human brain had ever attempted to process information at cosmic scales. Absolutely not. Commander Blackwood's voice cut through the heated debate. We're talking about connecting my daughter's mind to an entity that reshaped stars. It's too dangerous. He looked at Dr. Nash, expecting support, but found her lost in thought, running calculations on her tablet. The quantum shielding could work, Dr. Nash muttered, more to herself than the room. If we modify the neural dampeners. She looked up, meeting Thea's determined gaze. It's possible. Incredibly risky, but possible. Professor Webb, who had been quietly analyzing recent transmissions from the Void Weaver, spoke up. The entity's patterns have been changing. It's trying to modulate its output to a scale that won't overwhelm our systems. It's learning, adapting, almost as if. He paused, choosing his words carefully, as if it's preparing for exactly this kind of connection. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation and argument. Dr. Chen worked tirelessly to modify her quantum interface, while Dr. Nash developed safety protocols that filled entire databases. Admiral Rhodes, upon hearing the plan, immediately contacted her superiors. The military remained convinced that the Void Weaver's apparent cooperation was a prelude to something more sinister. Thea spent her time in the observatory, watching the transformed stars dance with new light. She practiced with smaller versions of Dr. Chen's interface, learning to translate thoughts into quantum harmonies. The headaches were intense, but each session lasted longer than the last. In her dreams, she began to hear songs that had never been played on Earth. Commander Blackwood found her there one night, after everyone else had gone home. "You're absolutely certain about this?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. His daughter had her mother's determination. Once she believed in something, nothing could shake her resolve. "Dad," Thea said, not taking her eyes off the starfield, "remember when Mom used to say that music is the only true universal language? She was right, just not in the way she thought. The Void Weaver, it's not just making sounds. It's speaking in the language that built the universe." The day of the attempt arrived too quickly, and not quickly enough. The Void Weaver had positioned itself just beyond Mars' orbit, its presence causing auroras to dance across both planets. The transformed stars in its wake pulsed with anticipation, creating harmonies that even non-musicians could perceive. Commander Blackwood found her there one night, after everyone else had gone home. "You're absolutely certain about this?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. His daughter had her mother's determination. Once she believed in something, nothing could shake her resolve. "Dad," Thea said, not taking her eyes off the starfield, "remember when Mom used to say that music is the only true universal language? She was right, just not in the way she thought. The Void Weaver, it's not just making sounds. It's speaking in the language that built the universe." The day of the attempt arrived too quickly, and not quickly enough. The Void Weaver had positioned itself just beyond Mars' orbit, its presence causing auroras to dance across both planets. The transformed stars in its wake pulsed with anticipation, creating harmonies that even non-musicians could perceive. As the medical team attached sensors to Thea's temples, Dr. Nash ran through the safety protocols one final time. The moment anything seems wrong, we pull you out. No heroics. Thea nodded, trying to hide her nervousness beneath a brave smile. Commander Blackwood gave her hand one final squeeze before stepping back behind the safety line. Professor Webb manned the linguistics station, ready to analyze any communication that might emerge. Dr. Chen took her position at the quantum harmonics controls, while Dr. Nash supervised the overall operation. The initial connection was like diving into an ocean of starlight. Thea's consciousness expanded, touching frequencies that human senses were never designed to perceive. The Void Weaver's presence was overwhelming, vast beyond comprehension, yet somehow gentle in its touch. Through the flood of sensation, Thea began to understand. The Void Weaver wasn't just a single entity. It was more like a symphony played by countless voices, all working in perfect harmony. The stars it transformed weren't being changed. They were being invited to join a grand cosmic orchestra that had been playing since the beginning of time. But something was wrong. The Void Weaver's song carried an undertone of urgency that hadn't been present before. Through their connection, Thea began to perceive fragments of something massive approaching, a discord in the universal symphony that threatened not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. The revelation hit her with such force that the safety systems nearly shut down the connection. The Void Weaver hadn't come to Earth by accident or out of simple loneliness. It had come to warn them, to prepare them, and perhaps to teach them how to survive what was coming. As alarms blared and concerned voices called her name, Thea made a choice. Instead of retreating from the overwhelming connection, she pushed deeper. If she could just understand a little more, hold on a little longer, she might learn the truth that could save everything she loved. The last thing she heard before consciousness faded was her father's voice calling her name, nearly drowned out by a cosmic symphony that spoke of both infinite danger and infinite hope. When Thea regained consciousness, the world had changed. She could still hear the cosmic symphony playing at the edges of her awareness, like a radio perpetually tuned to the frequency of creation. The medical bay's monitors showed brain activity patterns that Dr. Nash claimed had never been recorded in human history. The silence, Thea whispered, her voice carrying an echo of the vast knowledge she touched. That's what it's running from. That's what it's trying to warn us about. The assembled team leaned in as she struggled to translate concepts that existed beyond human language into words they could understand. Dr. Chen's quantum harmonics displays told part of the story. Massive waves of anti-resonance approaching from the galactic core, a phenomenon that didn't just destroy matter but erased the fundamental frequencies that held reality together. The Void Weaver was part of an ancient network of cosmic musicians, beings that maintained the universe's harmony. But now that harmony was under threat, it's like Thea paused, searching for the right metaphor. Imagine if silence wasn't just the absence of sound, but something alive and hungry, consuming every note until nothing's left to sing. The implications were staggering. The transformed stars weren't random acts of alien artistry. They were preparation, an attempt to create a defensive harmony strong enough to resist the approaching void. Professor Webb's linguistics team worked frantically to decode the vast amount of data downloaded during Thea's connection. Patterns emerged that seemed to describe ancient cosmic conflicts, stellar civilizations lost to the creeping silence, and desperate plans set in motion across billions of years. Admiral Rhodes, watching the analysis with growing concern, finally asked the question everyone had been avoiding. How long do we have? The answer came not from the scientists, but from Thea, who could feel the dissonance growing stronger with each passing moment. Months, maybe less, she said. But we're not helpless. The Void Weaver didn't come here just to warn us. It came because it sensed something in Earth's music, in our songs, something it hasn't found anywhere else in the galaxy. Dr. Nash's eyes widened as she correlated the data. Diversity, she breathed. Earth's music contains more variation, more different styles and rhythms and harmonies than any other world the Void Weaver has encountered. We don't just make music, we make it in thousands of different ways. The realization sparked a new urgency in their work. Dr. Chen began adapting her quantum interface to accommodate multiple musical traditions simultaneously. Professor Webb's team reached out to musicians and composers worldwide, gathering everything from classical orchestras to indigenous songs, from electronic beats to natural soundscapes. But it was Commander Blackwood who noticed the change in his daughter. The connection had altered Thea in subtle but profound ways. She moved as if hearing music in every footstep, every heartbeat, every breath of wind. More importantly, she had gained an understanding that went beyond the technical explanations of the scientists. The silence spreads because it convinces each world that its song is alone, isolated, she explained during a global defense briefing. But that's not how music works. Real music grows stronger when different songs come together. The Void Weaver didn't choose Earth randomly. It chose us because we already know how to make harmony from difference. As if in response to her words, the transformed stars began to pulse with new patterns. The Void Weaver was teaching them, showing how to weave Earth's diverse musical traditions into the fabric of space-time itself. Each successful integration made the barrier against the silence stronger. But time was running out. The first tendrils of anti-resonance had reached the outer solar system, causing instruments to fail and communications to go dark. The Void Weaver's presence was the only thing holding it back, and even its vast power had limits. Thea spent every available moment working with Dr. Chen and Dr. Nash, refining their understanding of cosmic harmonics. The headaches from using the quantum interface grew worse, but she refused to stop. In her dreams, she could feel the silence approaching, could sense its hunger for the songs that gave life to the universe. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. During a late-night session, as Professor Webb reviewed recordings of ancient Earth ceremonies, he noticed something remarkable. Certain combinations of rhythms, when played in specific patterns, created quantum effects that their instruments could barely detect. Humanity had been unconsciously tapping into cosmic harmonies for thousands of years. This discovery led to a daring plan. If they could amplify these ancient rhythms using modern technology, combine them with the Void Weaver's cosmic orchestration, and distribute the resulting harmony through the network of transformed stars, they might have a chance at stopping the silence. But the plan had one potentially fatal flaw. To coordinate such a massive harmonic convergence would require a conductor who could perceive both human and cosmic scales simultaneously. All eyes turned to Thea, who stood at the observatory window, watching the stars flicker like notes in an eternal song. The fate of not just Earth but the entire galaxy would depend on whether a 12-year-old girl could conduct the greatest symphony in the history of the universe. The day of the harmonic convergence arrived with both sunrise and starlight. Earth's greatest musicians had gathered in centers across the globe, their instruments connected to Dr. Chen's quantum harmonics network. The transformed stars pulsed with anticipation, while the Void Weaver positioned itself at the heart of their makeshift cosmic orchestra. The silence had already consumed the outer reaches of the solar system. Where its influence spread, even atomic vibrations ceased, a stillness more profound than death itself. Only the Void Weaver's presence kept it from advancing further, but even this ancient cosmic entity's strength was beginning to falter. In the GSDI's main chamber, now converted into what Dr. Nash called the Universal Concert Hall, Thea stood on a platform surrounded by interfaces both technological and musical. The neural links attached to her temples had been refined, allowing her to perceive both Earth's music and cosmic harmonies without the overwhelming disorientation of her first contact. The transformed stars will amplify our signal, Dr. Chen explained during the final briefing. Each one is tuned to resonate with specific frequencies. If we can coordinate them properly, the resulting harmony should be strong enough to push back the silence. Commander Blackwood watched his daughter take her position, fighting back tears of both pride and fear. "Are you sure about this?" he asked one last time. Thea's smile held the wisdom of stars. "Dad," she said softly, Mom always said music could save the world. She just didn't know how right she was. She hugged him tightly before turning to face her unprecedented orchestra. The performance began with ancient rhythms, drum patterns that had echoed through human ceremonies since before written history. Professor Webb's research had identified these specific beats as naturally generating quantum harmonics. As the drums built in intensity, other instruments joined in: sitars from India, didgeridoos from Australia, symphonic orchestras from Europe, and electronic composers from around the world. Through her neural interface, Thea could see how each sound created ripples in space-time. The Void Weaver responded, its own cosmic songs weaving between the human music, creating structures of pure harmony that spread out through the transformed stars. Each note added strength to their defensive barrier. Each rhythm reinforced the fundamental frequencies of existence. Commander Blackwood watched his daughter take her position, fighting back tears of both pride and fear. "Are you sure about this?" he asked one last time. Thea's smile held the wisdom of stars. "Dad," she said softly, "Mom always said music could save the world. She just didn't know how right she was." She hugged him tightly before turning to face her unprecedented orchestra. The performance began with ancient rhythms, drum patterns that had echoed through human ceremonies since before written history. Professor Webb's research had identified these specific beats as naturally generating quantum harmonics. As the drums built in intensity, other instruments joined in: sitars from India, didgeridoos from Australia, symphonic orchestras from Europe, and electronic composers from around the world. Through her neural interface, Thea could see how each sound created ripples in space-time. The Void Weaver responded, its own cosmic songs weaving between the human music, creating structures of pure harmony that spread out through the transformed stars. Each note added strength to their defensive barrier. Each rhythm reinforced the fundamental frequencies of existence. But the silence fought back. Waves of anti-resonance crashed against their harmonic shield, seeking to unravel the very vibrations that held reality together. Thea felt every attack as a discordant note in the universal symphony she was conducting, each one threatening to shatter the delicate balance they were trying to maintain. In that moment of near defeat, she remembered something from her choir practice. So long ago it felt like another lifetime. Music wasn't just about making sound, it was about listening. With this realization, she stopped trying to fight the silence directly, and instead began to listen to it. What she heard changed everything. "It's not destroying the music," she gasped, her voice carrying through the quantum network. "It's crying out in the only way it knows how. It's been trying to sing, but it doesn't know how to make anything except silence." Through their connection, the Void Weaver perceived her understanding and responded with a surge of harmonic energy. Together, they began to modify their approach. Instead of creating a barrier against the silence, they started weaving gaps into their symphony, spaces where silence could exist without destroying the music around it. The effect was immediate and stunning. The anti-resonance waves began to change, no longer consuming everything they touched, but instead becoming part of a greater composition. The silence, for the first time since the beginning of the universe, found its own voice in the cosmic choir. Dr. Chen's instruments recorded impossible data as reality itself seemed to reshape around this new harmony. The transformed stars blazed with renewed energy, their light carrying the combined music of humanity, the Void Weaver, and now even the silence itself to the farthest reaches of space. In the aftermath, as celebration erupted across the globe, Thea stood quietly at her observatory window. The stars looked different to her now, not just points of light, but notes in an endless song that she would always be able to hear. The Void Weaver remained in orbit, no longer a fearsome cosmic entity, but a collaborator in the greatest musical revolution in history. Admiral Rhodes, reviewing the final reports, summed it up best. "We prepared for an invasion and got a concert instead. Somehow, that seems very human." The universe had changed. The silence had found its place in the cosmic symphony. The Void Weaver had discovered new songs to share with its kind, and humanity had gained an understanding of music that transcended the boundaries of Earth and space. As for Thea, she had one more surprise in store. During the harmonic convergence, something unexpected had happened. Every transformed star now carried a piece of Earth's music within its light, and they were teaching these songs to other stars. The galaxy itself was learning to sing in harmony. Commander Blackwood found his daughter in the observatory late that night, humming softly as she watched the stars dance with new light. "What happens now?" he asked. Thea smiled, hearing melodies that would take lifetimes to fully understand. "Now," she said, "we learn all the new songs,